Good morning, good evening, good midday, whatever it may be. You would honestly think by like 15 episodes in that I know how to do an intro, but I don't. I genuinely have not fucking figured it out. So, yeah. So if you've been here for every bad intro, hello and welcome back. If it's your first time here, hello, I'm Tel. I am the voice behind the madness. Now, I want to make a quick note before we dive in, because I know everyone was expecting 4 episodes for the month of August. Now, genuinely, I am a woman of my word, but unfortunately, I needed to hit pause. Life has truly been chaotic on my end, and in between full time work, juggling the podcast, basically all the stuff that I mentioned in the first episode, it's just been crazy. So essentially, what I have done is brought you a bit of a different episode today, where I've basically combined a few cases so that I can try to give you guys a little bit more than just one case and one story today, and hopefully to make up for any disappointment that I caused. So essentially, we're going to be wrapping up Deadly Beliefs today with 3 episodes instead of 4. Now, consider this my little mental health break, and thank you for always letting me be human with you guys. So, today we're going to be talking about conspiracy driven crimes. Now, I get asked quite a lot about conspiracy cases and conspiracy theories, so I thought I'd bring you guys a little bit of that today. Now, for today's case, I don't necessarily mean those wild internet theories. I mean when people, often parents, become so consumed by belief in conspiracies like satanic cannibals, government mind control, or QAnon prophecies that they turn violent, sometimes against strangers, sometimes against their own families, and sometimes against their own children. So this isn't Jonestown and this isn't Heaven's Gate. This isn't about hundreds of people dying together. This is about individuals or just ordinary people falling into a rabbit hole of belief until it twists into violence in the most intimate spaces. So I want to talk about the power of conspiracies and the power of, I guess, conspiracy beliefs. Because for August, we've been talking, or for August, not really August, you guys know what I mean. Thank you, I'm sorry. We've been talking about deadly beliefs, and deadly beliefs basically center around a belief so strong that it can brainwash or manipulate people. So, conspiracy beliefs don't really fall too short of that. And conspiracies have always been with us. They didn't start with QAnon or Reddit threads or some shadowy chat room in 2016. They've been woven into human history for centuries. If you roll back the clock to the late 1600s into colonial Massachusetts, you're going to land right into Salmon witch trials. Ordinary villagers, farmers, ministers, mothers became convinced that Satan's servants were hiding among them. Now, essentially, this all really started with young girls that were having fits and claiming invisible spirits were tormenting them. But soon this belief just snowballed into mass paranoia. The courts heard evidence that today sounds completely absurd: visions, dreams, accusations with absolutely no proof or grounding evidence to back it up. Yet for Salem, it became a reality. 20 people were executed, dozens imprisoned, and all because a community believed a secret satanic conspiracy was destroying them from within. I'm also going to correct myself because I think when I said Salem the first time, I didn't say Salem. I'm sorry, it's late. I'm drinking coffee late. So while I'm with it, am I really with it? Is the question. We shall find out as we travel through the episode together. Sorry, I try not to laugh because obviously the episodes are not supposed to be funny, but it's just when I bring in my own little commentary that I start to giggle at my own silliness and the fact that I just give myself the ick so many times. So many times throughout these episodes. Anyway, carrying on. into our history talk. So 200 years later, in the 1800s, America was obsessed in a new hidden enemy, the Freemasons. The anti-Masonic movement gripped the whole regions of the country. Rumors swirled that the Masons, a private financial group, were secretly controlling banks, politics, and justice. Newspapers began to print warnings, politicians rode the wave, founding the first ever third party in the US politics. Now, this went on to be called the Anti-Masonic Party. People truly believed that their neighbours in funny aprons were plotting world domination. And then fast forward to the 1980s, and we find ourselves in the grip of Satanic Panic. Daycare workers, preschool teachers, almost all women were accused of being a part of vast satanic cults, secretly abusing children, sacrificing animals, even flying through the air on broomsticks. So I understand. We're just making a little pit stop here, guys. We're just refueling up here. Let's just stop. I know that some of this shit sounds absurd, but just bear in mind that, like, we're living in 2025. It's hard to, like I always say, it's hard to take ourselves back there. Satanic Panic was a real thing. If you guys are interested in it, look it up. That would have been a crazy time to be around. So while you're researching it, I want you to research the McMartin preschool trial in California. Now, this became one of the longest and coiniest criminal trials in US history. There was actually no physical evidence, no body, nothing but suggestive interview techniques with children, and a society primed to see devils in every shadow. But bringing it back to the times and as if we were in their shoes, for the parents that were living this was truly terrifying. So here's the thing. Conspiracy theories aren't random. They thrive in moments of chaos. Salem was a world of illness, fear, and war on the frontier. The anti-Masonic movement came after political scandals and economic instability. And the Satanic Panic rose in an era of cultural anxiety about women working, changing family roles, and the rise of television violence. Which brings us to now. The last decade has been a fertile ground for conspiracies. The internet acting like gasoline on every flicker of fucking paranoia. Communities that once would have whispered in secret now connect instantly across continents. Algorithms reward the extreme. Social media platforms spread fear faster than fact. So belief systems that once seemed fringe, like the idea of lizard people secretly running governments or satanic cannibals drinking children's blood to stay young, found homes, followers, and movements. Right, so we're rearing in for another pit stop. Basically, what I want to talk about today is a series of cases that I guess are a little bit newer. So we didn't really cover, but we've discussed when conspiracy theories sort of begun. I mean, how long ago this began? They probably began even longer ago than that. You know, that's where I can track it to. Okay, the 1500s is as far back as this girl is going to go. But I want to talk about some cases and then conspiracies that I guess have come out in the last couple of years. We're going to discuss them a little bit. I'm not going to go into major depth, but please comment if you guys want further deep dives into a specific conspiracy or case that I've covered. And we will get into it. But for now, this is what I'm giving you. Let's talk about QAnon. Now, this is one of the most infamous. So starting on anonymous internet boards, it told people there was a secret plan, that world leaders, celebrities, and billionaires were a part of a hidden cannibal running children trafficking rings, and that Donald Trump was secretly fighting them. Now, really, this just all sounded like a movie script. But for millions, it became scripture. They studied Q drops like holy texts. They built entire communities around decoding the cryptic messages. And when the predictions didn't come true, they doubled down, convinced that the plan was just delayed. And then Pizzagate, this was another major one. So basically a Washington, D.C. pizza shop became the imagined headquarters of a children trafficking ring, linked to politicians. In 2016, a man showed up with an armed rifle and firing shots inside to rescue the children. He believed they were all locked in the basement. There was no basement on the property whatsoever, but that didn't really seem to matter to him. His belief was real enough to justify his violence. And I get it. To most of us, this sounds absurd or just like a really good read on the internet. It kind of sounds outlandish, something you'd laugh at. But here is the horrifying truth. Once someone believes the world is secretly controlled by evil forces, every action, no matter how extreme, begins to feel justified to them. If you're convinced your child is about to be taken by a satanic cannibal, killing them starts to look like mercy. If you believe your neighbors are lizards in disguise, attacking them feels like defense. And that's when conspiracies stop becoming bizarre stories and start becoming deadly. So I want to talk about the case of Matthew Coleman. So in August of 2001 in Santa Barbara, California, Matthew Taylor Coleman was the picture of a California dad. He ran a surf school with his wife Abby, and he posted sunny Instagram photos with his kids, a 2-year-old boy and a 10-month-old girl. Friends would go on to describe him as kind, spiritual, and grounded. Someone who really seemed to have life figured out. But behind the smiles, something appeared to be shifting within Matthew. In the months before August, Coleman fell deep into a world of QAnon. It started like it often does, with curiosity, late-night scrolling, clicking links, but soon all the theories began to control him. The theories consumed him. He was convinced that politicians, celebrities, and billionaires were a part of a satanic pedophile cannibal, that children across the world were essentially being tortured for their blood, that hidden forces controlled everything. And then came the final twist. Matthew became convinced that his own children had been infected with what he called serpent DNA. He told himself that they were part evil, that by letting them live, he would be allowing the evil to spread. So on August 7th, 2021, Coleman told his wife he was taking his kids camping. And at the time, she didn't question it at all, because why would she? He packed the van, buckled the toddlers into their car seats, and drove south. But Matthew didn't travel towards a campsite. He traveled across the border into Mexico. For 2 days, he checked into a hotel in Rosarito, pacing and planning. And on August 9th, he took the children to a remote area near the coast, a desolate stretch of land surrounded by dust and waves. And Matthew came armed with a spear gun, a weapon that he'd only used for fishing. He turned it to his own children. When the Mexican authorities stopped him later that day, Coleman had confessed immediately. He said that he believed that he had to do it, that he was saving the world. That's what a conspiracy theory can do. That's what conspiracy thinking can do. It takes a father, someone who was meant to protect above all else, and convinces him that the ultimate betrayal is salvation. So I know I said I was only going to talk about new ones, but I really do want to talk about the Satanic Panic murders. So I'm going to throw this in there because I think it's too important to not include. So like we said, in the 1980s, Satanic Panic spread across America like wildfire. Talk shows screamed about cults. News reports claimed children were being ritually abused in daycares. Therapists used leading questions with children, convincing them to remember things that had never happened. Most cases ended in false accusations and ruined lives. Teachers in prison for crimes that didn't exist. Families ripped apart by whispers of Satan. But some went even further. Take the Turpin family. David and Louise Turpin had 13 children, ages 2 to 29. Now, they were obsessed with apocalyptic fears, convinced that the outside world was corrupt by Satan. They withdrew into a twisted version of home life, and behind closed doors, the children were chained to beds, starved, and beaten. They were told that the world was evil, that the outsiders were dangerous, and it wasn't until 2018 that one of the daughters escaped and called 911, revealing what the reporters would later call the House of Horrors. And while the Turpins weren't directly accused in the daycare ritual panic, their mindset came from the same poisoned well. The belief that Satan was everywhere, that children had to be protected through control, isolation, and even fucking violence. Now, there are so many cases during the panic showing parents attempting literal exorcisms, straining, beating, or starving their children because they believed they were possessed. And in several instances, the children did not survive. And within every courtroom, the parents cried and screamed that they had not meant to kill, that they thought they were saving souls. So it wasn't hatred, it wasn't neglect, it was belief, warped into something lethal. And then decades later, the internet gave us Pizzagate. So in 2016, during a heated US electoral cycle, a rumor began spreading that a pizza shop in Washington, D.C. Now, people were claiming that this pizza shop was secretly housing a children's sex trafficking ring, and it was essentially run by politicians. The story had no evidence, no witnesses, no victims, and it was based around a basement where the children were supposed to be hiding, but there wasn't a basement in sight. Now, before I go any further, I do want to just say I fell into this trap, and I think a part of me had to stop myself from deep diving any further back in the day about this one, because I really was getting in, like, you get in your mind about it. Conspiracy theories really, really warp your sense of reality. Now, for thousands online, the details of this case really didn't seem to matter. They believed what they believed. And like I said, I was one of them. Like, haven't we all fallen down that trap? And for Edgar Welch, his belief became a mission. So on December 4th, 2016, Welch drove from North Carolina to DC with an AR-15 rifle. Sorry, I started there because I don't know rifles or pistols or guns at all. But he had the rifle in the trunk of his car. I will give him that. At least he put it in the trunk. Now, once he arrived in DC, he pulled straight up to the Comet Ping Pong and he walked directly in. Now, this was in the middle of the day. Families are eating pizza, children are playing in the restaurant. He fired shots into the ceiling and walls, and he was simply doing this because he was so determined to rescue the children that were locked away. So when the police were called and then arrived to arrest him, Welch looked disheveled, like he genuinely thought he was saving lives. He didn't find a basement and he didn't find cages or tunnels. And essentially, he didn't find these things because I don't think they were there. I'm not sure. I mean, this is conspiracy, but I can say when he was there, they were not there. And as far as I believe the layout of this building, there is definitely no basement there. Now, the scariest part of these cases is that they weren't monsters hiding in the shadows. They are people who just got lost in a story. And they believe the only way to be good or find good was to do something unforgivably evil. So psychologists literally describe conspiracy beliefs as cognitive takeover. A conspiracy belief doesn't just sit in your mind like trivia. It reorganizes how you see reality. So imagine putting on a pair of glasses with red lenses. Everything you look at is going to have a red fucking tint, right? Like it's going to look red. Even if someone tells you that the world isn't red, your eyes insist that it is. That's what conspiracy theories do. They give people a lens, and once it's on, every detail of life bends to that lens. So, for instance, your child doesn't have a fever. Maybe they're being poisoned by vaccines. Your children's teacher isn't just strict. Maybe she's a cultist grooming her children. That's the warped reality and mindset that some of these people were in. That's where their mind was. And like, I think when you lay it out like that and paint it out like that, it's fucked up. I don't really know what other, like, obviously I've described it in a, I guess, well-versed way, and then in a what the fuck way, because I know that's where our minds are going. And like, to most of us, the leap kind of sounds absurd, but once the belief has taken root, they feel logical. And once a parent believes that danger is inevitable and they can't stop it, they start protecting from the imaginary enemy. So I think that's why some of these crimes really do cut so deep, because the harm isn't necessarily random. It's not strangers in the street. It can be children, and the harm can be caused by the very people who love them unconditionally. Take Matthew Coleman, for instance. His wife later went on to say that there were no warning signs, no violence, no history of abuse. He kissed his kids. He played with them on the beach. He tucked them into bed. He was an incredibly alert and in touch father. And then one day, the belief of QAnon completely shifted his reality. This warped his reality so bad that to him, his babies weren't his babies anymore. They were ticking time bombs of evil. Or to think of all the exorcism cases during Satanic Panic, where parents were literally convinced that their children were possessed, physically restrained them, starved them, beat them, and sometimes done it until they died. These weren't strangers. These were mothers, fathers, pastors, and they weren't acting out of hatred. They were acting out of a warped sort of love and sense of reality that they were living in, believing that they were purifying children, saving their souls, salvation to fucking death. Sorry, you know me, I've just got to add my twist on it. But belief doesn't grow in a vacuum. In Jonestown, it was clear that Jim Jones was the mastermind behind it, drilling loyalty into his followers. In Heaven Gate, Marshal Applewhite preached nightly summons about vehicles and about next level. There was a leader and a voice to follow. In conspiracy-driven crimes, the leader is everywhere and nowhere. It's the faceless Q posting cryptic messages that drop online. It's a live streamer ranting about satanic elites. It's Facebook groups, it's TikTok lives, Telegram channels, echo chambers where fear bounces backwards and forwards until it sounds like proof. And when parents step into those spaces, they don't feel alone anymore. They feel chosen and they feel special and smart enough to sort of see what the sheep can't. And when the dust settles after these crimes, the belief doesn't vanish. The conspiracy may fade from the headlines, but the wreckage always stays. The aftermath is always the same. Families torn apart, communities traumatized, and lives that can never be pieced back together, and people that are gone forever. So the aftermath of Matthew Coleman taking the lives of his children. Back in California, Abby Coleman's life imploded. One day she had 2 smiling children, a husband she trusted, a family business by the beach, and then in the space of 48 hours, it was gone. She had kissed her kids goodbye, probably not even thinking twice when Matthew said he was taking them camping. And 2 days later, the police knocked on her door. Her babies were dead, killed by not a stranger, not by accident, but by the man she had built her life with. Abby didn't just lose her children that day. She lost her husband, her future, and her sense of safety. In interviews, the investigators went on to say that she was completely blindsided. There had been no history of violence, no warning signs that she could see, and the community had felt this too. Parents within the Santa Barbara community looked at Matthew Coleman and saw someone who had been normal, the surf instructor, the family man. And for them, if someone like that could unravel into murder because of something he read online, what's to say about everybody else? The court case only twisted the knife deeper. Prosecutors detailed every step, the lies he told, the weapon he brought, the things he said afterwards about serpent DNA. For Abby, for her family, reliving it in the courtroom was like losing her kids over and over again. That's the legacy that belief left behind in the Coleman case. A family destroyed, a wife grieving 3 losses all at once, her son, her daughter, and the man she thought she knew. The Satanic Panic left an even broader wake of destruction. Thousands of families and communities scared. Daycare workers who had loved their jobs and women who had cared for children like their own were dragged into trials that lasted years. For 6 years, teachers sat in courtrooms defending themselves against imaginary crimes. One woman, Peggy McMartin Buckley, grew old waiting for the charges to be dropped. By the time the jury acquitted the last of them, their reputations were already ruined. They couldn't go back to teaching. They couldn't walk into the grocery store without the stares. They'd been branded as satanic cultists. And for some people, that stain never faded. And for the children that were caught up in this entire thing, many grew up to say that they were manipulated into false memories. Interviewers used leading questions, rewarded them with remembering bizarre things. So these children weren't victims of satanic cults. They were victims of paranoia. I don't think the community's ever really fully recovered from this. Schools closed, trust eroded, and long after the panic faded, people who had been accused, innocent people, are still carrying the scars. So here we are, the end of our Deadly Beliefs series. We've walked through Jonestown, where almost 1,000 people followed Jim Jones into the jungle and never came back. We've stepped into Rancho Santa Fe Mansion, where 39 Heaven Gates members lay in sneakers, and a certain comet would carry them away. And now we've seen how belief, even the faceless and the leaderless, can twist ordinary people into killers. 3 very different stories, but the thread between all 3: belief. Belief is powerful. It can unite, inspire, and comfort. But belief, unchecked and unquestioned, can consume. It will swallow reason and it will twist love into violence. Jim Jones demanded obedience in the name of equality. Marshall Applewhite promised salvation in the stars. QAnon whispers that only you know the truth and that everybody else is blind. And people listened, people believed, and people died. Now, what gets me every time in every single one of these cases is how ordinary these people really were. They were just like us. They weren't monsters. They weren't strangers. They were neighbors. So the real question, the one I want you to carry with you for the end of this series and into the future. And that question isn't how could they have believed this? It's how do we guard ourselves? How do we make sure that our own need for meaning, our own longing for answers, never drags us to a story that ends in blood? So that brings us to the end of Deadly Beliefs. And if I'm being honest, this has been a pretty heavy series. And it's been a lot of research. Some of it has been really, it's obviously always interesting, but some of these cult ones are very heavy on your heart, if that makes sense. And I think with Deadly Beliefs, it kind of just the reality of knowing that this could happen to anybody. Anybody could fall into this just by reading something too much. Like nobody, I think, ever goes into anything with the sole intention of it consuming their entire being. But nevertheless, I do want to say thank you for sticking with me for this one, besties. For letting me take the mental health break mid-month and dropping a shit ton of episodes to make up for it. And for reminding me always that the true crime community gets it. So before I wrap it up, I'm going to tell you guys what September is. And I feel like you guys might already have guessed it because it just goes with September. Serial Killer September. So, yes. I'm so excited. I have already got 5 episodes for you guys and I'm very excited. So, buckle up. We've also got some Monday Madness episodes dropping as well. We're back on track, gang, and feeling very good about it. I'm very excited for September. If you guys have any ideas for cases, let me know because I do have some spare time so we can do some bonus eps potentially. You know, we don't like to make too many promises, but I do have an extra bonus ep in September for you guys as well. So that is all for Chaotic Crime. And until next time, remember to stay loud, stay curious, and never, ever stop asking questions.